John Crumpacker, longtime journalist in the Bay Area, joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. John, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. Yes.
Well, we feel pretty good about Gonzaga and St. Mary's having established tournament resumes at this point. What are the chances BYU does enough during league play to get in that mix to make the WCC a three-bid league this season?
Well, a three-team, the top-heavy WCC, it was anticipated before the season started that there would be three teams in there, and I think BYU to this point has been maybe a little disappointing with the 9-4 record non-conference going into the conference season, and I think BYU is definitely going to have to make some noise in conference play to be considered for the NCAA tournament when it's all over. You know, a strong showing in the regular season and certainly in the tournament.
You know, you mentioned how it's a top-heavy league, and it's expected to be so. I mean, I think we all remember last year some chatter about the bottom half of the league really needing to pick things up a bit. I mean, who were some of those teams maybe at the bottom that you think maybe can take a leap? And, I mean, how quickly can that actually become reality where it's not a top-heavy league all the time?
Well, it's a formidable challenge, and I think we're seeing that in the fact that there's four new head coaches in the conference this season. Their administrations, they all want an elevation in the caliber of play from those teams. And so far, I think probably the most surprising team has been the USF, San Francisco, with a 10-3 record under first-year coach Kyle Smith. Don's had a strong showing at the Diamond Head Classic, and at least they're beginning the conference play with a lot of optimism. Portland and San Diego are both 7-5, and are showing pretty well. Portland has of course, the new coach in Terry Porter, the longtime Portland Trailblazer. So Portland will be worth watching as the season gets going.
And piggybacking off your USF thoughts, John, one could argue that Kyle Smith at USF has maybe had the biggest early impact of the new coaches, in particular because the roster he's got there on the Hilltop is really young, right?
There's only one senior on the roster at San Francisco. I think they're, if my public school math was correct, they have 13 of the 15 players are freshmen and sophomores. So that bodes well for the Dons going forward, I would think.
You wrote about in your most recent column, and by the way, you can read John Crumpacker's weekly columns on WCC basketball at WCCSports.com. You wrote about the glass ceiling that this season is kind of separating BYU from Gonzaga and St. Mary's at the top. And from an overall perspective, and Jason kind of hit on it earlier, there's a bit of a ceiling between the top three and the rest of the league. How much do you think the addition of the new coaches, what kind of impact will they have on maybe minimizing that gap or that distance?
Well, other than USF right off the, as we're starting the season, it'll take a while, and I don't really see any instant elevation in play. It's a process, and it takes a while for a new coach to establish the program. So, as I said a little earlier, Terry Porter at Portland is off to an encouraging start, and certainly USF. And even Loyola Marymount is off 6-4. That's it'll be improved over the last few years in Los Angeles. So it's there'll be a interesting. It's what I call the muddle in the middle. There's 4 or 5 teams or so right in that middle strata, and is anyone going to rise above that? That'll be a question.
John Crumpacker talking WCC Hoops with us, joining us on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. We obviously get to see a player like Eric Meek up close, and we see just how not only valuable he is to BYU, but the numbers he's putting up and where that ranks not only in the conference but nationally. Where would you put Eric Meek in terms of possible Player of the Year candidates?
Well, for the WCC, I think he's a strong candidate for Player of the Year. I like his game. I was not too familiar with him. Of course, he had been gone on his mission for the last 2 years, and he's come back. It seems like he, as I suppose it's common, he left a boy and came back a man, and he's an impressive player in the post. And for what he can get done, I think his only, I don't know if it's a weak spot. He seems to have a tendency to pick up some fouls. That could be an issue going forward, but a very good-looking player and a strong Player of the Year candidate.
John, finally, last year was the exception to the rule since BYU's joined the WCC. The conference is a multi-bid NCAA tournament league. How do you characterize the league right now from a national setting?
Well, I think the league both benefits and hurts the league in that Gonzaga has been so strong, and that's the team that nationally has the highest profile by far, which is certainly good for Gonzaga. It's well earned. St. Mary's had an excellent season last year, won 29 games, won the regular season title. I think people maybe overlook the fact that the Gales beat Gonzaga twice. They swept the regular season series, but still, despite that and reaching the championship game, could not secure an invite to the tournament. So that's a challenge. But I think this year with both Gonzaga and St. Mary's RPIs are really strong, and it should bode well come tournament time. That sort of, as I mentioned, I wrote about, kind of puts a little pressure on BYU. Let's see what the Cougars can do. Certainly have a lot of talent, and I think just a question of integrating all that talent, new talent. I'm intrigued to see Yoeli Childs. He's showed up well in recent games. Looks like he'll be more and more of a factor. L.J. Rose. So there's some nice components to that BYU team.
If you'd like to read John's stuff, you can go to WCCSports.com. He's a columnist there. John, thank you so much for joining us. Great stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk to you down the road.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to John Crumpacker for joining us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.